The shelter was his only companion in the endless white expanse, its crude wooden frame creaking under the relentless Arctic wind. Thomas Carver, a lone bushcrafter and amateur blacksmith, had ventured deep into the wilderness, seeking solitude and inspiration for his craft. 3 days in the Arctic wilderness would be a test of his skills and spirit. Or so he thought. By the end of the first day, the world had already changed. Thomas had spent hours fashioning the shelter, dragging deadfall branches from beneath snowdrifts, securing them with sinew and frostbitten hands. Inside, his small forge sat dormant, an anachronism in the harsh landscape, waiting to be kindled. The forge was his experiment. Could he shape steel in this icy wasteland? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Thomas lit a fire, its orange glow fighting back the endless night. He pulled his notebook from his pack, sketching designs for knives and tools he hoped to craft. Above him, the auroras danced like specters. A shiver ran down his spine, not from the cold, but from the strange resonance in the air, as if the northern lights were humming a forgotten song. It began with whispers. On the second day, as he stoked the forge to life, the wind seemed to carry voices, disjointed and faint, but undeniably human. Thomas dismissed them as tricks of the mind, born from isolation and exhaustion. He focused on his work, hammering a bar of steel against the makeshift anvil he'd built from scavenged stones. Sparks flew, briefly illuminating the cramped shelter. But the whispers grew louder. That night, sleep eluded him. The shelter's walls groaned under the weight of the wind, and shadows danced erratically. The whispers coalesced into a single voice, distant yet distinct. "Forge it," the voice urged. Thomas bolted upright, his heart pounding. The forge, now extinguished, sat cold and inert. Yet, something glimmered in its ashes. A shard of metal, pristine and unnatural. He didn't recall placing it there. Against his better judgment, he retrieved it, the shard radiating an otherworldly chill despite the fire's former warmth. On the third day, reality began to fracture. Thomas worked feverishly, unable to resist the shard's pull. The steel he shaped seemed to bend and flow of its own accord, forming intricate patterns beyond his comprehension. The whispers guided his hands, their language alien but intuitive. Hours passed in a haze of heat and frost until, finally, the object was complete. It was a blade, slim, elegant, and impossibly sharp. The auroras above pulsed in response, their light spiraling down as if acknowledging the artifact. Thomas held it up, the blade reflecting not his face but an endless void. Then the voice spoke again, no longer distant. "You've opened the gate." The wind howled as the ground beneath him quaked. From the shadows of the Arctic night emerged figures, tall, gaunt, and cloaked in flowing ice. Their eyes glowed with the same unearthly light as the blade. "Who are you?" Thomas demanded, though his voice trembled. The tallest figure stepped forward, its skeletal hand pointing at the blade. "You have forged the key. Now, you must wield it." Before Thomas could respond, the figures dissolved into the storm, leaving him alone with the blade and a growing sense of dread. The auroras above twisted into unnatural shapes, their light no longer comforting but oppressive. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. They spoke of realms beyond comprehension, of gates that should never be opened, of tasks he must complete, or else. As the storm closed in, Thomas realized the shelter was no longer his haven. It was his prison, and the blade was his burden. 3 days in the Arctic wilderness had turned into a lifetime of responsibility. And as the first of the gates appeared on the horizon, a swirling vortex of light and shadow, Thomas understood that survival was no longer his only challenge. It was just the beginning.